That's a tough act to follow, Burger King, and the billions of awareness. So anyway, I'm excited to share a little bit about Salt and Straw this morning. Before I start off, how many have heard of Salt and Straw? Okay, that's great. How many have been to a Salt and Straw? Okay, that's very helpful. Well, I'm going to, as Stephen said, I'm going to share a little bit about the company to give it some context. There we go. Real quick company overview, and then really just share more food for thought, 3 ways in which we really try to become part of the communities and vice versa, and have the communities become part of us. So just 3 examples, which we can talk about further on the panel that follows, but just think these might be really fun to consider. So let's go back to the purpose of the company. And the purpose of the company does not have ice cream in it. And so just take a moment to think about that. What the purpose of the company really is to create happiness through moments of wonder. And I will go into that a little bit more, but it goes back to what we're talking about in terms of building community. In this picture right here, you'll see Kim Malik. She's one of the co-founders. She's our CEO. And then her cousin, Tyler, who is our head ice cream maker. A little bit of background. Kim, for many, many years, had this dream of really just having a community gathering place. And she really wanted to just be that neighborhood place where people would come with their families or, meet their neighbors in line or what have you. And so it really does go back to the beginning. And then at the same time that she was thinking about starting Salt and Straw, her cousin happened to be in culinary school. Went to Goodwill, bought an ice cream maker, started tinkering with some recipes, and the rest is history. He did not finish culinary school because he got really busy making ice cream, but that's just a little bit of background. As I mentioned earlier, it's a brand that's about more than just ice cream. And what we say is we use ice cream as a platform to explore ideas, ingredients, and connections. And again, this all goes back to creating those moments of wonder, really sort of being a conversation starter for communities. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of the examples. At a quick glance here, founded in 2011, in Portland, handmade, still to this day, small batch ice cream. We have 20 shops. Those are all company owned. Average scoop shop's about 1,200 square feet. I'll talk a little bit about locations. We also have an e-commerce business, and then we have some really unique partnerships as well, which we really consider an extension of being a part of communities. And also, how do we partner with people where, as Kim says, people show up and go, of course Salt and Straw is there, because they're partnering with other people that are really focused on creating that wonder or that aha in a moment. So for example, Alaska Airlines. Has anybody had the opportunity to experience Salt and Straw on Alaska Airlines? Okay, yep. So just a little, wow, look at that. So that's also part of our strategy. When we look at locations, again, we have 20 locations right now. We are going to be making our big leap to the other coast from the West Coast this year, opening up 2 shops in Miami. So it's a very, very big moment for this little brand. But where we really try to do is, again, thinking about locations, it's not any one. It really is about where are people gathering in their communities. And so we do have a lot of, Main and Main High Street, but you also have some like One Paseo, suburbs, things of that nature. So it really is a mix. Probably one of our most exciting ones is in Disney. And according to Disney, they estimate that this might be the busiest ice cream shop in the world. So it's pretty fun. For those of you that have been to our scoop shops, you will notice that it it feels a little bit different than other ice cream shops. We really try to transform the experience. One of the things that you're going to notice is you don't see the ice cream. When you come in, it really is about trying to just take a moment, move everything else aside, and focus on what you're about to experience. As we mentioned, one of the things that we do is we have sort of two sides to our menu, if we will. We have what we call our classics, and each city that we're in has their own classics menu. You heard me right? We have different menus for the different cities, working with different partners that are notable, and I'll talk a minute more about that. And then each season, or month, as we like to say, we change the menu, the other half of the menu. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about that. Just because we're in the marketing biz here, wanted to focus a little bit for marketing for us at this point in time in our growth has really been done by others. PR in social engagement have been our two biggest drivers to date, and have been in a big way since we started in 2011. So you can see here, that has been one of our biggest things, is really getting people to experience it and then talking about it. And same thing, not only for the media, but also when we look at our customers. They really are what has helped grow this brand. And if you look 20 locations and the number of Instagram followers, I was recently told that that was really at the high end relative to how many locations we have, having that many Instagram followers from a ratio standpoint. So that's something we think about, not just to drive the business, but how do we continue to drive the business, is thinking about these things and our community, if you will. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about examples about community. And one of the things before I launch into this is, as I noted, Salt and Straw is based in Portland. And when I travel around, it's interesting because people are like, oh, Salt and Straw, that's that Seattle brand. Oh, Salt and Straw, that's that brand from the Bay Area, isn't it? And it's interesting because it's about a 50-50 chance whether or not I correct people or not. Because I haven't quite solidified in my head that I necessarily, it's like, okay, that's maybe a job well done, that they really feel like this is part of their community. So where does it matter? And I think that's a little bit of how Salt and Straw is turning things on its head a little bit, is how do you be based one place, but really be owned in the hearts and mind by other places where you are, that people don't necessarily know where you are based. So I talked a lot about menus, and this plays a really big role for us, and I could talk forever just about this and different ones that we have done. But when I step back and talk about the role that our menus have played in the communities, first and foremost, as we mentioned, against sort of best practices of streamlining and efficiency and scalability and all of that, one of the secret sauces that we have is creating partners with different best makers, if you will, and I'll show some examples, chefs, farmers, people that are in that community. And one of the best press things that was on the previous slide that I love is people said, you know, you walk into a Salt and Straw, you read their menu, it's kind of the who's who or the best of that culinary scene of that city. And so that's really exciting too, because a lot of times people want to try Salt and Straw, but then they've also heard about, you know, Beecher's cheese in Seattle. And so they think, wow, this is great. I'm getting to try both of these things. So that has been probably one of the biggest areas of importance, but also too, because when we think about our partners, they were really sort of, we always say 1 + 1 = 11, better together in terms of creating a bigger splash. Seasons Reimagined, we, like a lot of us in this room, we celebrate the holidays, we have Halloween, we have Thanksgiving, but we do them a little bit differently. And again, in the spirit of creating those moments of wonder. So for those of you that don't know, for Thanksgiving, Tyler, our head ice cream maker and team, recreates a Thanksgiving dinner in the form of ice cream. So we have a candied turkey skin ice cream. We have a cranberry blood orange sorbet. We have a stuffing ice cream. And I know people are like, what? That sounds weird. Just taste it before you judge. Just promise me you taste it. And so that's fun for people. And I can't tell you how much I would see people posting on social media that then they would have their Thanksgiving ice cream or their ice cream Thanksgiving after they had their traditional Thanksgiving. So again, another way to create moments of wonder and community and excitement. Same thing with Halloween. I don't know if any of you have had, but we partner with a firm down in the Bay Area. We're using bugs for protein. And we actually have an ice cream with some bugs in it during the Halloween time period. So again, that's been really fun. All that aside, we also do things that are raising conversations for communities, whether it is food waste, sort of the imperfect foods. We did a whole menu based on sort of going out and using those foods that otherwise might not necessarily get chosen to be used. Human rights is another area where have done some things. I go back to Burger King and having a little bit of a personality and some voice on different topics that spark conversation, and then have really been involved about local farming and supporting local farming. Couple examples that I mentioned here, as you can see, in California, we've coupled with, Dandelion chocolate, Sight Glass coffee. In Portland, we have, Aberkina olive oil. So there's just different ones that from local suppliers, different ones that we are working with, Beecher's cheese, Elm coffee, and all of those people become part of the fabric of the menu and our partners in the city. And right now, that is taking place for a couple more days. This is a current example. Over here, I apologize, but you can see we've got a list of all of the chocolatiers and all of the flavors by city on the right-hand side for each of the chocolatiers. So we worked with about 25 different chocolatiers, different in our markets. Each menu is different. And then we created a map. You can see over on the left-hand side, we created a map that sort of pinpointed where all these chocolatiers are located in each of the cities. So a custom map menu, and then really promoting people to get out and sort of local love, go visit their chocolatiers in their city. So again, another way of creating community by maybe creating a way to discover things within their own city. Another one that we have a lot of fun with each September, and this really falls into that hyper-local efforts. And it goes back to the very beginning. When Kim and Tyler opened up their first shop in North Portland, there was an elementary school around the corner. And the first thing was they said, you know what? When we go to back to school, we should have fun and we should really work with the kids and create this student inventor series where they learn a little bit about the science and the flavors and what flavors go together. And they created this curriculum. And now this year again, we will have it in over 30 schools because we partner, our shop managers and our store teams partner with those schools, go do exercises. The kids come up with these different flavors. And then we actually have those in our shops in the month of September. Those act also as a fundraiser for the schools, and we give a percentage back of the menu to those schools. And then throughout the year, we do other things with those schools where some will partner with our shops to create snowflakes, decorations for our shop windows during the holiday time period, or we will donate ice cream for other fundraisers and auctions. So again, very hyper-local efforts, but things that have been really effective in terms of becoming part of the community and the community becoming a part of us. And last one is really, I think, one that is near and dear to both of our founders, is what we talk about of building community through connections. And, we have a joke, if you haven't experienced it, but people that have know that Salt and Straw has lines. And in the world of quick serve, lines, things like, what is going on? What are you doing? And what's interesting, though, is we have really found that if you make it worthwhile, people are okay with that. And we now are going on, our next year will be 10 years, and it still amazes me when I drive by the first Salt and Straw, no matter time or day, still a line out the door. And one of the things when we ask customers, it's like, you know what? I get to meet other people in line. I talk to them. We're talking about the ice cream, what they're going to try. It really becomes part of the experience. But I think at the end of the time, and this quote does it best, it's really that full-faced attention of sampling. So many people are like, wow, I got up there and I could sample as many of them as I wanted to. And so then they sort of understand this experience that's about to happen and exploring. And some people have a standing date that they come every single month when the new Flavor Friday hits and come and sample all of these. So again, throughout here, I've kind of touched on some things where Salt and Straw has been really effective of going a little bit counter to logic, but really figuring out a way to, again, become part of the communities and vice versa. And we're really, really lucky and thankful that people, once they try it, really get on for the ride and are excited about experiencing it. So those are just a couple examples.
Allison, thank you so much. Alison is going to stay right there. If you have questions for Alison, hang on to your questions, because Alison, I asked Alison to present this sort of as a preamble to the panel, which brings up two other emerging brands to talk about the challenge of brand building in an increasingly cluttered environment. To take the lead on this panel, we have Sarah Hoffman, who's the Director of Connections at T3, an agency that's been an old friend of Mediapost for a number of years. She's worked on the agency side for a number of years and has done work for brands like Nestle and Annie's and UPS. Please welcome